A jury indicted Vallow Daybell on charges of conspiracy related to the attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreaux. Now, that was her niece's ex-husband. So we asked you, what do you think of this newly unsealed indictment? Well, here to discuss, trial and criminal defense attorney Rachel Fiset and litigation trial attorney Rich Schoenstein. All right, guys, our first comment comes from Care Bear. Where is Melanie Boudreaux in all of this? Maybe they don't have enough, but I feel like there's a strong possibility she knew a great deal about all of these people being killed or attempted. She's not innocent in this. And you know what, Rich? I felt the same way during the trial. I said there were probably more people they could have roped into this conspiracy. There were probably reasons they decided not to. Maybe there wasn't quite enough evidence, but I agree with Care Bear. I think there were a lot of people involved in this conspiracy who are aware of, and in some ways, the law in Idaho doesn't require that they do anything. They just have to be in agreement that this needs to happen, and one of the group do an act in furtherance of the conspiracy. So I think the rope certainly could have been a lot wider.
I agree with that. I think Care Bear is right on the money here. I think there were other people who were involved in this fraudulent religion with Vallow Daybell and Chad, and I think there could be a much bigger web, not only of the crimes we knew, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were other crimes. These people seem to need money. They seem to need to get people out of their way. They seem to want power, as the prosecutor pointed out. And I do think there could be other people. Maybe we'll see some of that down the road. It was interesting that Melanie Boudreaux, I think, was in Idaho at one point, but ended up not testifying. I don't know exactly what that means, but it was interesting.
Yes, I remember that happening, and you're exactly right. Maybe she was represented by counsel, and they couldn't come to an agreement, and she decided not to testify. All right, our next comment comes from Katie. Katie says, very simply, she's a serial killer. And you know what, Rachel? I mean, it's difficult to define exactly what a serial killer is, but someone who has been involved with or conspired to kill as many people as she has, I mean, there's some validity to that.
I completely agree, and that is how I think of her when you think of the trail of people she has gotten involved, the people that have been killed, the people around her that have died suspiciously. I absolutely think that she is a serial killer, and that's the way I think of her. When I think of the web that she's created, it is almost unsatiable. So that is a good, in summary, I think that's right.
Yeah, and you know what? I think Rich is right. This wouldn't have ended had she not been stopped. Had they not been stopped, they would have needed money, and they would have found out in their little inner circle who had access to money and who became a zombie suddenly, so that they could get their hands on whatever money they had. I think, getting this woman under control, getting Chad under control was essential to saving a lot of lives. Our next comment comes from Michelle. Michelle says, so she gets time out of jail to get more spotlight in a courtroom. She is truly sickening. At the end of the day, that's kind of how it works, Rich. She will be extradited from Idaho to Arizona for the trial. She'll be in probably not great conditions, but certainly probably better than the prison she's in now as she sits during that trial. There's some question as to whether you throw assets at it. I don't know. Your thoughts?
Well, that's a downside to another prosecution. She does get to do that, and maybe that's why if she's not going to plead guilty to this, maybe that's part of why. But, Rachel said before, prosecutors prosecute, and I have to sign on to that line of thinking. That's not a consideration, really, to stopping a prosecution. If you think she's guilty of a crime and you think you have the evidence and you want to bring her to justice, you go forward, even if in some sick, twisted way she might enjoy it.
Yeah, fair enough. Very well said. All right, Rich Schoenstein, Rachel Fiset, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Always a pleasure to have you guys on the show, folks.